right, getting there. Gang's all here. Let's call this meeting to order. May we have the roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Chang Frank?
Here.
Commissioner Kent? Here. Commissioner Sardinas?
Present.
Commissioner Trinkle?
Here.
And Chair Abbott?
Here.
Commissioners Curtis Chan and Brian Martin are absent tonight.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and read the land acknowledgement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lejeune. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. All right, great. Item 2, approval of the minutes. Motion
to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Kent?
Yes.
Commissioner Sardinas?
Yes.
Commissioner Trinkle?
Yes.
And Chair Abbott?
And that's a yes.
Perfect. Motion passes.
All right, great. And so now it's time for public comment. Is there anybody online who had a hand raised or anybody in the audience? I don't think there's anybody in the audience.
No hands raised
No
on.
hands raised. We'll give, is there anybody online? There are people online?
No.
Okay, well then I don't think we need to give them time. Very good. We can move right in then to item 4.1, street tree management plan.
Thank you, Chair Abbott. Good evening. My name is Jeff Bond. I'm the Community Development Director for the city. We're back again to talk about the street tree management plan. I'm joined by our consultant, Ryan Suttle, who will make a presentation in a moment. I'd like to just say a few words to set it up. First of all, as you know, and just to a refresher for anyone who might later be watching, this is a plan that we've been developing for a few years through the commission. It started in phases, the first phase being the inventory of what we have today. That work was completed in 2023, and that database is available publicly on our webpage. We're now in the final stages of the second phase, which is to prepare the plan. And this is a guiding policy document for us to improve the street tree, the management of our street trees, to expand the canopy and the health of the community and do all the amazing things that street trees can do for us in Albany. The purpose of this particular agenda item is to give you an opportunity to see the plan in its entirety for the first time. We've gone through essentially chapter by chapter in a number of meetings, presentations, and detailed discussion. Now we have a draft plan. We're looking forward to getting some detailed comments from you this evening. If you are ready to say it's ready to go to the City Council, we'd be happy to have that action this evening. If you need another shot at it, that's fine too, but we are anxious to keep the momentum going towards council discussion and adoption. And then the third phase of all this is actually implementation of the plan. Preparing the plan is great, but there are a lot of things that we're going to have to do to make it real. There are some ordinance changes that would need to be made. There are some probably very difficult financing decisions to be made about funding the program successfully. And we want to get into that so that the City Council is ready to execute those decisions, particularly if they wish to go to the ballot in 2026. It's not too soon for them to start having those discussions in the coming months. Another thing that I wanted to mention before I turn it over to Ryan is this is, once we get the draft in shape that we think is ready for final production, it will be handed over to a graphics person to polish it up. And we didn't want to do that until we give you all a chance to provide your substantive detailed comments. But again, this evening, if you feel like it's in good enough shape that we can go ahead and do that, we'd like to only have to do that once. Of course, we will make any changes that we need to later on, but the less major graphic changes that we need to make in the final stages here, the better. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Ryan, and before I do that, I will share my screen and get his presentation teed up here. Sorry. There we go. Thank you.
There we go. Thanks, Jeff. Good to see everybody again. I think last time we were here in April. So it has been a couple months, but not all that long. Today is going to be fairly similar to the last time. We had most of the draft ready at our last meeting, but hadn't had the chance to send it to you. So as Jeff said, we're really excited to get your feedback on that, as well as show you some of the things we've incorporated since last meeting. So we've been working hard with our City of Albany staff partners to review and revise recommendations from them, work on some of the budget projections based on some of these recommendations to see what it would actually take to implement. Aspirational goals are great, and you also need to have a plan to actually make them realized. One of the main things that has happened in the meantime, which we were really happy with, was tabling at the Albany Planning Citywide Planning Expo in May last month. We had a great opportunity to listen to community members for around 2 hours. We printed out some large format graphs from the plan and the goals matrix, and we're just able to hear what people thought of them, what was important to them, what they wanted to see out of the street tree forest in Albany in the future. Obviously, maintenance concerns, not everybody has a rosy picture of trees, so it was really grounding to see what the community wanted and actually get some in-person feedback. And at the same time, it also helped us realize and set some more aspirational goals, particularly with native species. That was really important for people, and we're putting them in the forefront of this draft in a way that I think is really cool and actionable and meets the goals of a resilient forest and also those more aspirational goals of native planting. So, without further ado, I'll briefly go over chapters 1 through 4 and 6 today. So 1 through 4 is largely context setting in the City of Albany, the policies, the actual resource of the trees. Chapter 5 covers community perspectives in events like this tonight, so obviously it can't be completed until we're actually done with the process. So that'll be kind of the last chapter to be completed. So chapters 1 through 4, introduction and context. 2 is the City of Albany. You all probably have a great idea of that. I didn't at the beginning of this project, so that was kind of our opportunity to learn more about the history and the place. Number 3 was looking into the forest, that the inventory that Jeff mentioned earlier. That started in 2020 of the street trees, looking at the condition, size, as well as the provenance of them, how many native trees there are, where they come from, mature size, and also things like invasiveness and ecosystem service value to try to get an ecology-centered approach in some ways. Then we looked at the current tree management and protections in the city. In the beginning of this process, we, as well as the Pros Commission, worked on these vision statements. I won't read them verbatim tonight. Those haven't changed since the last time we've been here. Mission statement again. Broadly speaking, we want to make sure that the benefits of these trees are equitably distributed through the city to the best extent possible. There's obviously constraints in the public right-of-way along streets, and we have to play with what hand we're given here, but we want that to shape the policy. The overarching goal here is the sustained benefits, all aesthetic, environmental, etc., of street trees while reasonably, practically, and proportionately managing their inherent risk consistent with industry best management practices. We want to make sure that the recommendations both align with current practices and also give room for updates as the industry changes. Trees are dynamic living things. Our understanding of them changes every day, as well as what counts as the best management practice. We want to make sure that this is kind of a living document that can be updated over time accordingly. So to start with chapter 1, broadly, introduction and context, why care about street trees. They have ecosystem services they deliver to the community, like cooling shade, filtering air, improving air quality that way, sequestering and storing carbon, and providing wildlife habitat value to birds and other invertebrates and some mammals. Social sustainability concepts like beautification and placemaking, particularly with large trees like this eucalyptus on Solano there in the photo. They improve physical and mental health and encourage walkability, which in turn it generally is associated with higher business revenue of places that people are encouraged to walk by. That ties us into economic sustainability, so improved revenue for nearby businesses, obviously increased home values, reduced cost associated with heating and cooling the structures. And we want all of these three camps to be shaped by equity. So the benefits provided by trees are hyper-localized to where they're planted. A tree planted on one side of town isn't going to help somebody on the complete opposite side. So I want to make sure that these trees and therefore their benefits are as equitably distributed as we can. Why a street tree management plan versus a master plan? The CAP, the Community Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, calls for an overarching urban forestry plan, which would concern private trees, park trees, things that aren't street trees. This is just to manage street trees. It's really what the city manages now, so this is a good point to start tweaking current policies and then maybe taking a step back later and expanding it. So this is our broad project timeline, so to speak. So like I mentioned, the context was really set with the CAP. Step 2 was partnering with the city here between HBC and the City of Albany. From there, we reviewed the current policy and procedure, including the CAP and the general plan. Those are two most closely associated city plans that have to do with urban greening and tree management. From there, we reviewed the tree canopy and inventory analysis, so looking at both individual trees as well as canopy demographics across the city for street trees. We were able to look at canopy distribution for all trees, but obviously don't have data on private trees and things like that to give you information on individuals across the town. All of this really was shaped by Step 5, community outreach and engagement. Fits in everywhere, but I couldn't create a 20-point timeline. So this is still ongoing, obviously. In events like this today or the Community Planning Expo, we've had really, really valuable feedback from community members in shaping some of these goals. And then plan development, number 6, which is what we're culminating here tonight. So number 2, the City of Albany. There are 14 neighborhoods in the city that we looked at. Obviously largely developed and residential. It's a difficult place to be a street tree, in other words. So it takes some nuanced management and some very specific goal setting to be able to manage street trees effectively. And we also wanted to make sure that we were connecting with other city planning documents, including the 2035 General Plan and the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. All right, chapter number 3 is taking a little bit deeper of a dive into trees, including canopy cover assessment, inventory analysis, and ecosystem service analysis. That's the order I'll go through today. We used iTree Canopy, which is a partnership between the Arbor Day Foundation and the U.S. Forest Service to estimate canopy cover across the city. On the whole, around 19% of an aerial view is covered by trees in the City of Albany, but they're not all street trees. Only about 1/5 are trees that could be growing along streets, and 4/5 are private trees, park trees, or located elsewhere, Albany Hill, for instance. So urban trees are really important, and we can see that street trees are a really important component of the urban forest, and it's a great place to start with kind of this greater planning effort. 68% of the city was covered by impervious surfaces, and impervious surfaces are really closely tied to the urban heat island effect. So one of the main benefits of trees is shade. They can cool these impervious surfaces and really lessen the pressure of this heat island effect that can make the town hotter into the night, and obviously will only become more important as climate change progresses. We then looked at, divided this canopy among those 14 neighborhoods. So this, I believe we've showed you before. The main revision to this is changing the planting priority, so now it's in 4 bins. Those with the lowest assessed street tree canopy are placed in the higher priority than those that have higher percentages of street tree canopy currently. Again, these are all estimations. One note here, so the outlier, as you can see, is Hillside with total canopy of 31%. That's obviously influenced by Albany Hill. So that one was a bit of an outlier. But everything else is fairly, fairly accurate. The estimated benefits, so what do these trees actually do for the city? This is the air pollution estimates here. The individual totals are not all that important. The main takeaway here is $53,000 a year, 54 nearly, are estimated benefits delivered to the city by street trees alone. So this is just trees in the inventory that we were provided to look at, which is huge. That's quite a contribution. You can see things like these NO2s and ozone, which are associated with car emissions, are particularly important here, especially with the highways on the west side of town. So this is really cool, and this is a tangible benefit that these trees are bringing to the city, and justification to manage them in a way that maximizes that. The next benefits to look at are carbon. So the top row is sequestration annually. This is each year the trees are growing and putting more carbon into their tissues, into the trunks and roots, leaves, etc. And then the carbon stored is the estimation of what's already there in the wood. So this is even larger, so around $52,000 a year dollars worth of this carbon sequestration, and well over $1 million already stored. So this, all to say, Albany already has a really valuable resource, and managing it is an important thing to think about going forward, and I think this will get us there in the subsequent chapters. The inventory itself had some really, I think, encouraging takeaways. So most trees were in good condition. Fair condition trees with moderate defects, things that can be managed over time, were less frequent. Even less frequent were poor condition trees, dead trees, one critical condition tree that needed attention right when it was inventoried ostensibly. Things like declining, decayed, and topped trees were pretty rare. So this is a good starting point. It's doing a lot for the city in terms of ecosystem service delivery, and they're in good condition, which means that they have a potential to deliver these benefits over time. The most common species here, there's 15 on the screen behind me. I won't have time to go through, I think, the 200 close to in the inventory. But a lot of these are common to Bay Area landscapes. Number one is the crepe myrtle, just over 11% of the population, followed by water gum, red maple, sweet gum, Chinese pistache. One important takeaway here is the color coding. Oh, not sure what happened there. I zoom in. There we go. So most of these 15 most common species are small at maturity, especially at the top with the crepe myrtle. Fewer are medium or large trees at maturity, and it's kind of a careful balance to be met. So a lot of room in along Albany streets is constrained. There are narrow sidewalks, there are utilities both above and underground to compete with, street signs, all sorts of things competing with the space with the trees. And these small trees are great for small spaces. At the same time, we also need to be focusing on these large and medium trees where they make sense, where they can be grown, to maximize the benefits that the trees can provide over time. This is new for this revision, so Mark asked us to look at these two species specifically, camp fir and sweet gum. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these. They're kind of the main offenders busting up sidewalks in the city. Most trees belonging to these species are mature or old. The old term would be over mature, but I think old is kind of more gentle maybe. But that being said, they have limited time to be assets to the city, and these need to be maintained proactively before they all decline at the same time. They present somewhat of a risk there being a monotypic age and reaching those old and potentially senescent stages of life at the same time, and being two of the largest species in the city. Among those 15 most common trees, none of them were native to California, and thus not the Albany area. So we looked at the inventory at large and saw how many were native to California as a whole, and how many are native to the reasonable Albany area. California native, I think if you picked a state, the term California native might have the least amount of meaning, because we have such a wide variety of biomes from the north to the south. So we took a look at trees that might reasonably be growing in Albany's historic habitat and in the hills nearby, and came up with this list here. So around 2% of trees in the inventory we considered Albany natives. Some are not going to be appropriate for future planting. For example, coast redwood, one of, if not the single largest tree species in the entire world, is not going to be an appropriate species to be planting in Albany streets. Unfortunately, I do love those trees though. On the other side of the spectrum, things like coffeeberry are too small. I think it would leave something to be desired with the benefit that a larger tree could provide, something like a coast live oak or buckeye, things like that could be good choices for where they're appropriate. All right, so now that we've taken a look at the trees, we can zoom out a little bit and look at how they were managed. So we'll look at how trees maintained now, the city's current reactive tree maintenance model and kind of what that means, as well as a benchmarking and comparative analysis with nearby cities of similar size in the Bay Area. So right now, as we've gone over here before, Albany has a shared maintenance agreement. The adjacent property owner is responsible for managing that tree. Albany will plant them on request. And Albany does prune trees, but on a reactive management model. So that means something happens that prompts this work, either a failure or some sort of conflict is reported, the city goes out and mitigates it and prunes it. That's compared to a proactive management cycle or inspection cycle where the city may be divided into grids. You would inspect every tree on a defined cycle and prune problems as identified, potentially before they become issues that would trigger a reactive management model. Both are done around the Bay, around the country as well. But we found that among the 8 nearby municipalities that we reviewed, 7 actually proactively manage street trees, which is the opposite of the current reactive management strategy here in Albany. And one main implication of that is in reactive management will have higher unit costs for pruning with mobilization and demobilization of tree crews, kind of ad hoc. You can't have a tree crew set up on a street and prune every tree. So looking at that, We see, on average, between the 2023 and 2024 financial years, the unit cost to prune a tree was around $480. With data that we observed from other contracts, for proactive maintenance, on a grid pruning approach, it would be around $140 a tree. So there's a potential to reduce the unit cost. Obviously, it's not as simple, and it's not going to be like, boom, your problem is done, but this is something to think about. A proactive maintenance over time, especially as problems are addressed earlier and earlier, and the trees are actively managed, the need to prune will eventually go down, and those will stabilize. All right, so I want to pause now after those chapters for questions before I get into the recommendations and kind of the substance.
I wasn't quite following. It seems like you said there are 0.7% California native trees and then 2.15% Albany native trees. Wouldn't it be the other way around? I mean, if it's Albany native, it's a California native, right? So
Yeah, that's a good point. So the 0.7 were California natives that aren't native to the Albany area.
Sorry, could you repeat? Sorry.
Yeah. So those, let me go back a few slides so we can. So this 0.7 are trees that are native to California but not native to the Albany area. So.
Oh, I see. That's
Yeah.
that differential. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so take like
yeah.
a red alder, for instance, or something like that. You wouldn't find those growing here natively. But if there was one planted, it would be considered a California native, but not an Albany native.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Along those lines, do you have a chart of the Albany native that we have?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, that is the Albany?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so most of them are coast live oak. 64, 15 are California buckeye. So these are the species that we identified as California, or as Albany natives.
And can you remind us again which ones have the potential for the largest canopies? Is the coast live oak?
Sure, yeah, so coast live oak, California buckeye, of these wood, valley oak as well. So coast live oak, valley oak are really large trees. Those wouldn't be appropriate in smaller areas in the city, but where there is space to support that tree, they would be decent choices. California buckeye is more of a mid-sized tree at maturity. In some circumstances, if space was really constrained, a toyon or a wax myrtle, a very small, kind of towing the line between shrub and tree, but could be, an option. They're great plants on private property too.
I'll just jump on what they're saying. Do you know how many of the California Albany native trees were planted versus already existing?
Yeah, I don't. I would imagine, given the development history of this city, that none are indigenous. It's not to say that it's impossible, but I would say unlikely. As street trees specifically. Park trees, trees in open spaces, there are likely some that are native to here, but trees growing along streets in between the sidewalk and the curb, it's very unlikely.
Having seen pictures of the city from the 20s, there were no trees. Yeah.
But that's a different question than if they were you could plant the native.
Sure, well, yeah, they were. That's evidence that they were planted at some point.
Maybe I was questioning if it was recent or not. But anyway, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right, of course, if they're on the, right, okay, got it.
One more question. You had the chart showing old trees and young trees, and one of them was the sweet gum.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed that they were all mature, but not old, but yet they're all decaying and falling down. So is it like a different sense of old when it's in an urban condition?
Yeah, so we used diameter as a proxy for age. We can't go out and increment bore every tree. Decay can happen to a tree of any age as well. So sweet gums are not really good compartmentalizers. Trees don't heal decay. They can kind of seal it and limit its spread. Sweet gum as a species is not great at that. So the decay can spread even in mature, semi-mature sweet gums.
They're dying kind of prematurely because of
I mean,
condition.
decaying doesn't always mean dying either. Those are two kind of different things. Decay is a natural process in the tree's lifespan and not entirely linked with death. But you can't have an ancient tree, or very rarely will you have an ancient tree along a street. So most of them are mature or old. Yeah.
Thank you.
You didn't talk about the invasive trees in
Oh,
this
sure.
presentation, but that was within one of the
Yes.
chapters. And one of the recommendations that you make is for those trees not to be actively removed. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on kind of the
Certainly.
rationale of like why you didn't think that they might pose a problem.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing is the representation in the inventory is pretty low of those trees. We also don't see them taking over streets and really invading those highly disturbed habitats already, or areas, not habitat. So we don't see that as one of the more pressing issues with street tree management. In California, it's kind of hard for trees to be invasive. There's just such little water that they don't spread all that far. If you go in areas like the south or the southeast, they can just take over roadsides and like nobody's business. So along streets in Albany, it's not something that we've seen. At the same time, we also don't recommend that anybody plant any more of them. And when it's time for them to be retired, take them out and replace it with a more appropriate species.
And from that, I was looking at our list of street trees, and I noticed there are ones that get like moved. This is not recommended. Here's something that's recommended now, but there's not like a column that says, because there were a few that you highlight as invasive that are not like, listed as invasive on that sheet. Is that something that could change, and what would be the process for that? Would it be something that could be part of the plan at this point, or is that kind of a later stage?
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question.
More like, so you guys recommend identifying what trees are invasive, but there are still some of those trees on our list of street trees. So how do we best identify those to the public so that they're not planting them, or just full on remove them from our list of trees?
I would
And there
just
were only a
take them
few.
out. Yeah.
Okay.
In one of the charts or something about condition each trees are in, it says there are 32 that are vacancies. Are vacancies places that you can plant trees now before having to dig stuff up?
I believe so. Yeah.
So just ready for planting.
I think those were just empty basins that the inventory crew found.
Okay.
Yeah. And this was gathered in 2020, so who knows how many have been planted since.
And I did want to just kind of underscore that, and we have the chart showing the canopy cover in the different neighborhoods. And we're talking exclusively about street trees. So there may be, like on the Hill, where there might be lots of private trees and no room for street trees. So when we're thinking about equity, we need to keep that in mind. I'm also wondering if and of course this is a conversation for another day, but if a program could be created, if it would be legal, that the city could support, where we can't plant street trees, we could support planting private trees, perhaps, in the front yard or something, just as a, but again, that's neither here nor there, just.
Food for thought, yeah.
Yeah, because there are streets, there's just no way.
Absolutely.
You're not going to get street
There's
trees.
just simply not enough.
But if they want trees, we could help them.
We could plant it near, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some cities, I know San Carlos has a similar issue where they don't have a whole lot of room in sidewalks, but they encourage people to plant them near. They call them
Yeah.
street-facing trees.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, great thing.
Okay, to move on to chapter 6.
I think so. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, so here are the goals. And I'll go through these individually so we don't have to stare at this and just have me drone on. But broadly speaking, we have our overarching objectives. We have actions, how to get there, and then key points, kind of the finer details of individual things you can do to get there, make it more digestible, more approachable, and kind of piecemeal in approach. Ideally, all of these actions could be pursued, but obviously we have to play within the constraints of budget, time, and staffing. Also, these goals and implications should be revisited as the plan is implemented, as individual actions take place, to evaluate progress against these suggested actions. So, goal number 1 is to grow a healthy, extensive, vibrant, and diverse street tree population to provide 5% canopy cover by 2050. So, as we saw earlier, around 4% canopy cover is offered by street trees right now. This is a 25% increase. This might sound low, but as we've already established, there are really heavy limitations in the City of Albany for street trees and how many we can put in, how many we can put in the ground, the size of the tree that can mature in the individual space. There's just heavy limitations. We have to be cognizant of those, but there is room for creative imagining of these trees and spaces. Number 1, and this was kind of shaped by several conversations that we had at the Planning Expo, is to prioritize Albany natives within that species diversity. So we still want to pursue species diversity of the forest as a whole. It's really important for resiliency in terms of new pest outbreaks or climate change pressures, so you don't lose all of one species and then you lose a quarter of your urban forest. But as we saw, Albany natives are not very well represented in the inventory, so this is a great opportunity to kind of boost those numbers in appropriate sites. Seconded from there is climate-adapted species, things that will perform well in Albany's projected future and perform well now. And I'll get into how that species selection can happen in a second. And both of these goals also have to be framed by maximizing the canopy based on the site. Not everywhere can we grow a big cool tree like this in front of flower land. But that should be, kind of the aspirational goal. Really maximize that tree canopy, maximize the benefit that it can bring to the area, that shade, the carbon sequestration, air quality improvement, and the like. So action number 1 on how to get there is to develop a citywide street tree planting strategy to increase canopy cover and improve equity between neighborhoods. Based on our calculations and a 10-year planting period, this comes out to around 170 street trees a year, which is more than is being planted now in Albany, but not a whole lot more compared to this last year. John, is that right? 100? 100 average. So it's a considerable increase, but we're well on the way. In order to do this, we'll need to define a budget for the maintenance program for newly planted trees. That's one really important part of a street tree planting initiative. There's a wonderful article published last year, I believe, called Beyond the Golden Shovel. I think it's my favorite title, but essentially it means you can't just plant a tree and pat yourself on the back and walk away. Trees need maintenance. A successful tree planting, in my opinion, is a tree planted in the ground that has a lifetime of care and through its death and eventual replacement. So there needs to be a budget for maintenance for these newly planted trees to make sure that they're established and are able to get to that next stage of life. We want to measure citywide and zone-specific tree canopy every 10 years to track progress. One tool to do that would be iTree Canopy. Another tool was recently published this year by CAL FIRE and the U.S. Forest Service. It's the California Urban Canopy Viewer. And it only shows total canopy cover from the city, but it could be a way to track canopy cover over time. If it keeps happening, obviously the Forest Service budget is precarious at best. So tools exist to do that. Action 2, so climate adapted species, again, with the intention of planting right tree in the right place is kind of an industry term. Obviously, there's no single species. It's about matching the tree geometry to the site to maximize the benefits for public health, wildlife, and resilience. So planting appropriate species for the specific location. This would look like the city arborist looking at the site and presenting a list of appropriate species for the person, the resident to choose from, with the goal of maintaining species and age diversity in the urban forest. Albany already does a great job with both of those things, and we want to maintain that, if not improve, over time. So what is climate adapted? Again, this is tree species that will thrive now and into the future. in the context of climate change. So things to consider are water use overall, as well as the use of recycled water. Recycled water has higher salinity, and a lot of species are really quite sensitive to it. So if that is part of the plan for Albany in terms of conserving potable water, careful species selection be required. Looking at sunset zone and hardiness zone, where these trees grow now. And one interesting way to select these, I think, in a way that is done down in Berkeley, is to look at migration routes. A lot of the trees, particularly oaks from Southern California and Mexico, are along that Pacific Flyway and offer a lot of the same benefits to urban wildlife as our native trees do here. So one really good example of that is a silverleaf oak. Quercus hypoleucoides is becoming more available in nurseries and is really a promising candidate for a climate-adapted species. The tool that we used to estimate Albany's future is this University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science tool. Obviously, this is not definitive. Pomona is not going to be moved up here to Albany, but it gives a reasonable understanding of the general area that Albany might feel like in 60 years. It will be experiencing warmer temperatures in both winter and summer, and considerably wetter winters. So using this tool, we then pulled the public inventory data of Pomona, tree inventories along streets, and created a list with 3 categories: whether the tree was present or not in Albany's urban forest now, street tree inventory now, its salt tolerance in considering its potential longevity with recycled water, its invasive potential, and its overall water use needs. We were a little limited. This inventory didn't contain condition data, so we weren't able to tell how they were performing in Pomona, just presence or absence. But it's a place to start. So somebody like John could look at this list and see, hey, we don't have this species here, we do have this species here. It seems to be present in Pomona, and you can then try to plant trees now that will really respond well to these future projections. In shaping these species selection goals, we want to make sure that several things are considered and prioritized based on feedback that we've gotten here from you all, as well as engaging with the community. So obviously diversity and resilience, number 1. Trees and wildlife, water use, human health impacts, placemaking, which is less tangible, but something that I think we can all agree that the trees do a huge job of here in Albany, and ecosystem service delivery. So we want to maintain the placemaking that the trees provide, maintain all these benefits that the trees provide now, and increase them into the future. So objective number 2 is to define responsibilities and support improved maintenance practices and protection of trees in the city. So action 4 to get to this objective would be to codify responsibility and set standards for proactive public tree maintenance and protection, rather than reactive. If the city is going to take a more active role in planting and planning and management of these trees overall, a proactive approach really makes sense to lower that individual cost per tree and allow problems to be identified earlier and responded to in a more proactive manner. The key points here are to codify the city's authority and responsibility for street tree maintenance and clarify definitions in the ordinance, to revise the criteria for street tree removal, to shift responsibility for safety-related tree concerns to the city arborist, and to take a proactive inspection-based approach to tree maintenance. To that end, and we've gone over this before, I think at our last meeting, we've made some recommendations for revised tree removal criteria. Here, it's important to have criteria that are as objective as possible. Obviously, trees are changing all the time. No trees, two trees are the same, so it can be a little hard, but these are the first 4 that would be kind of the purview of the city arborist. So death, the tree is dead. It sounds simple. It sometimes isn't. Number 2 is tree risk rating. There are industry standards in how risk is assessed. tree risk would need to be assessed by a qualified arborist and then compared to a city-set risk threshold. There are 4 levels: low, moderate, high, and extreme. And it makes managing risk a lot more uniform and you're able to kind of make consistent decisions based on that are driven by as objective assessments as we can manage. Tree condition rating, so even if a tree isn't dead or risky, it can still be declining and dying. Proactive maintenance, so removal and replacement is a prudent management decision for those sort of trees, and as well as species. So if it is associated with this invasive list and the person wants it gone, that this could be a justification for removal. To get back to your point, it wouldn't be something that we would be actively seeking out in the city. No eradication efforts, so to speak. This number 5 is new, so this is in response to a discussion that we had last time. A lot of those, as we heard, don't have a whole lot of room for community input or input from pros as kind of figureheads for the community in these sort of meetings. And a place for this would be, like number 5, a nuisance tree category, things that are likely to destroy, impair, otherwise interfere with the streets. A good example of this that, Todd, you may have brought up last time was a female ginkgo. Obviously, nobody is really happy with those when they're outside of their houses. Another example would be, a poorly placed tree, maybe blocking a non-essential entrance. The important thing here is that this would really be shaped by community input, and it's not a decision that requires arboricultural expertise to make a finding about. Similarly speaking, number 6, development and construction. This would be the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission rather than the city arborist. And just conceptually here, among these 6 criteria, the first 4 would be findings made by the city manager or designee, here the urban forester, city arborist. Number 5 would be the pros commission, and number 6, the planning and zoning commission. So objective number 2 is to define responsibilities and support improved maintenance practice of trees. As we already discussed, action 5 is protection for private trees. As we saw in the canopy assessment, most trees in the city aren't street trees, and to align with that overarching goal outlined in the CAP and several sections of the general plan, in considering overall canopy cover for the city, it is going to be difficult to make meaningful gains with street trees alone. So considering protection of private trees would be somewhere to start. And obviously this is going to be a lot harder to do than some of these other goals, but it's a consideration, maybe more of an aspirational goal to shape future management. So this would be codifying protection for private trees, describing motivations, again linking back to the CAP, general plan, maximizing canopy across the city and protecting it, writing definitions and clearly defining the responsibilities in that section. So again, just referencing here, I don't think it can be overstated that there are far more trees that aren't along streets in the city. Protecting the current tree resource is really the best way to increase canopy cover. It takes decades sometimes for a newly planted tree to offer the same canopy cover as a tree that is removed. So looking into this, I believe, is important in pursuit of that goal. Goal number 2 is connecting with an engaged and informed community to provide stewardship of street trees. Street tree management and urban forest management has to be tied to the community to deliver what they want, and street trees succeed when people are on their team, so to speak. So this would look like designing a cohesive and inclusive public outreach program focused on building awareness and the benefits of street trees and how and why trees are protected in the city. The city already does considerable effort in management and protection of these street trees, and I think communication of that is somewhere that can be really improved and really strengthen the partnership between the city and the community here. Some key points, steps to get there would be engaging with local community groups in urban forest stewardship activities that can look like tree maintenance days, mulching, watering, planting trees. That feels great with people. You can also train volunteers to prune young trees effectively, which kind of is a two-pronged approach here, which would involve the community and potentially reduce maintenance costs over time and provide some ownership over these trees, as well as providing up-to-date information about tree protections and management on the city website, which I believe is that, it would look like something like the next agenda item here tonight. One action here, I believe this might be the last one, is to become a Tree City USA. There are 4 criteria to get this accreditation from the Arbor Day Foundation. Of those 4, Albany already does 3. And it's a very low-hanging fruit to just celebrate Arbor Day. You get these really sweet signs to put up all over town. And I think it's a great way just to communicate throughout town and kind of passively, too, the care and the intention that Albany puts into the tree management. So this is a really low-hanging fruit that I think will be quite impactful in promoting the program over time and just getting the word out that Albany cares about their trees. So the next step, hopefully we can get some feedback from you all today to strengthen the plan. And as Jeff said, we're hoping to get this to City Council before too long. And I think with that, I'll end my update.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, time for your clarifying questions. Anything you wish to ask or would like to have clarified?
Start again. I have a
Very good.
question.
Yeah.
You said your goal is 5% increase on the canopy
5% total.
total, right? So how is that determined? You have to kind of have the size trees you have in mind, and how many of the medium, small, large trees. You have
Yeah.
that figured out?
Yeah, so the inventory data we have from the Arbor Pro 2020 inventory doesn't show canopy size. So we took the area that we estimated street trees to cover around the city and divided that by the number of trees. So it's a rough estimate of how to reach that. It's not going to be a fine, clear blue line of plant 170 trees every year. Sometimes you might plant less, sometimes you might plant more. This is also taking into account the number of trees that are removed every year historically in Albany. So sometimes if fewer trees are removed, you will have to plant fewer. So they are rough estimations to get there, yeah,
All right.
as detailed as we could manage.
Others?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I have a couple questions about this potential tree canopy, and I'm wondering, one way, I know it is too bad that we can't do anything about the tree wells, although I do like some of the suggestions, like using the sidewalk repair as an opportunity to expand tree wells at that time, so you're
Certainly.
already building it into
Yeah, and the
something
city
that's
does that
already happening.
actively right now.
Oh, great. Great. One question I have, though, is if we already have some, for example, Washington, there's some very large tree wells there. I don't know if the trees that have been planted, which were only planted in the last, year or so, have maximum tree canopy potential. And it's one of the few areas with large wells. And so that's just, I feel like an opportunity. It's the new tree's only been there for a year or two. Can we just swap out? I would love to see that, because we don't, like you say, we don't have a lot of large tree wells, and that's not, anyway, so I'm not sure even how we'd sort of include that in the plan, but it is just an opportunity where we don't have many opportunities for large tree wells. And
Are you suggesting that the trees that have been planted there aren't, or you just don't know? Aren't going to be
I
very
don't
large?
know,
You don't
actually,
know? Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And so, so that would be my question.
But you're right, now would be a better time than later.
Yes, it was 5 years from now when we lose that 5 years. So that's one other thing is the potential to swap out, if it's already young tree, and then also, is there sort of I get that we can't plant trees with a very large potential in a small spot, but I don't feel like there's a very prescriptive way that that it's being done. I don't know if homeowners even know what the options are. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there is sort of a calculation. Do you know what I mean? Let's not leave it to it could be pretty sort of prescribed, right? Like if you have this size well, then these are the kinds of trees that could fit here. If you have a bigger size well, let's make sure that you choose the bigger trees and just suggest that to homeowners rather than, of the plenty. Homeowners aren't going to know how large the tree canopy is.
Yeah.
And that is something, the few things we can do as a city to increase the large canopy sizes to encourage large canopy trees when we have that large tree well, so.
Yeah, so in our current species list that we're developing, we have a column for size of planting
Great.
space requirements.
Okay.
So one way that I've seen that be successful is exactly how you are framing that, where the city forester narrows down the list based on the actual site and presents the homeowner with a limited list.
Right,
That's how
exactly.
they do it in Berkeley.
Okay,
So,
great.
that way they still get the choice and get to choose which tree they like and they prefer. And it also puts that goal of maximizing the tree canopy at the forefront.
Great. Also, one slide you had there was about determining what should be determined by our commission versus, an arborist, which I totally get that. And can you go back to that? I don't.
Yeah, the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one.
Yeah, is that a change
Yes.
in current? Because
Very
currently
much so, yeah.
it's everything comes before us.
Well,
right?
currently,
Except for emergency.
the recommendation comes from the arborist, and then the kind of the force comes from us.
Right.
This is kind of changing that,
Yeah.
so that the forester reports on 1 through 4, and 5, we actually have some force, and then,
Exactly.
is that a way to say it?
Yeah. Yeah, so they would be exactly reporting their decisions. They would be in charge of actually determining that tree meets the criteria, rather than presenting a recommendation that could get held up. That creates an opportunity where, and obviously I'm not saying this has happened, but something like tree risk, having that outside of the city's authority, really leaves some liability space that should be tightened.
It's funny, I was thinking, and I think the one time that we have disagreed with the forester on a safety issue, the commission decided to be more conservative. The property owner wasn't comfortable with the tree. The arborist said, actually, it's safe. But we said, no, it's okay. We want to respect the property owner's fear. So that's not one. But anyway, I certainly understand the liability issue.
Is this typically how I don't know how many other commissions in other cities
Yeah.
do it. Yeah, I know,
That's
like El
usually
Cerrito
how
has
it does
something.
it. This is pretty rare.
What, sorry?
This is, the way it is right now is quite rare.
Okay. So
Yeah,
this is
this
more
is more
consistent with how other cities, okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Could I jump in on this one? Because I think this would represent a fundamental change of how we communicate with the commission about street trees or trees in general. Instead of just coming in with removals, we would be more of a active presentation of here's what's going on more regularly, maybe quarterly or twice a year, so that you would be getting regular updates on what's going on, so nothing is a surprise.
So here's a question. Would that report come before the action of removing the trees? Because I feel like apart from the commission's say, it's the public's hearing is part of the process too.
And this is, in talking with Ryan and Daria, there would be a process of notification of when
Sure.
action was taking, but when action would be taken. And I think my sense is that we would always want to have discussion about the tree unless it's an emergency and there's something critical, but that would be clear. But
Yeah.
the idea would be, hey, here's a tree that we're concerned about. Okay, now the risk rating, we did the surveys and it needs to come out. Oh, it needs to come out before our next meeting. We'll post it and we'll have to develop what that process looks like. But that would be the intent, that it would be, a much more regular presentation
Right.
of what we're doing and the conditions of the trees, rather than, oh, here's a removal, without the context.
Right. Thank you.
I mean, one thing to say about that, which is a big change, because sometimes it feels like that's all we're doing, is public reading. But, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it this way, but I also think that those cities might also partner that sort of emphasis with the proactive, right? So, I would just hope that the City of Albany, if we're going to take away that sort of commission oversight or decision-making process, also has, as a city, we do more proactive pruning, which could potentially mitigate the need to, dead or dying trees. Some maybe could be a sort of an outcome of or a result of not maintaining it well. So.
Yeah, I think that's a yes and. It's kind of both.
I think our hope is that this comes on not as just this recommendation, but the whole suite. We take over a larger role in the maintenance side, not only regular pruning, but the young tree pruning, watering, planting, and so hopefully, it'll take, if we have a 7-year cycle, then it's going to take 7 years to get through the whole city. But once you get into that cycle, hopefully the overall health and quality of the street tree canopy will increase.
Yeah, it gives you more tools over time too.
It gives you more tools, and my guess is we'll have less trees falling in this category.
I would think so.
So I'm glad to hear that you guys are developing a list of additional trees. I know we have that list. One of my recommendations later was going to be that we have our list of trees as an appendix for people to see in the final document. But I guess I'm just wondering, how is that list just the trees from Pomona, or was there an additional process, part of the talking to the community, talking to John?
Yeah.
When will that be included in the final document that goes to council? And if not, what is that process for review of the list?
Yeah, so those are two separate lists. The Pomona one is more of a reference document for looking at things to maybe add to the Albany list, or just to try out, to see what might work for future plantings. The Albany list was developed in tandem with John, starting with the list that was already in Albany and adding some of these climate-adapted trees that have come to prominence in recent years, things or other species that we've seen perform well around the Bay in similar climates, particularly Berkeley. So that will definitely be included as an appendix. If you want to take a look, and I should have included the link here, but there's a list on selecttree.com right now. It's a UFEI, so Urban Forestry Ecosystem Institute, I believe, Cal Poly website, a compendium of just about any tree that you can find. So I put the trees that are on that list into a Street Trees for Albany list there, so you can just click on a picture of the tree. It shows you all of the maintenance needs, where the tree's from, and some really pretty pictures. So that will be linked to as well, kind of as an interactive list.
Maybe you mentioned, but I don't recall. Is there a mitigation, or in the bottom line there, it says Development, Planning, Zoning Commission. So if they take out a tree on private property, does the city have a mitigation that they need to plant a tree or do an in lieu fee for it, or there's nothing at all for private property? It's only for the street tree in public property.
I don't know. Mark or Jeff, do you have?
Right now, there's nothing.
I can take a shot at answering that question, I think. We don't have a formal mitigation 1-for-1 or 2-for-1 kind of requirement. It is something that it'd be a normal part of a planning review of an application. As it stands today, we do, when, say, a home remodel comes through, we do have a standard requirement that they plant a street tree unless there's, for some reason, it's not feasible. But generally speaking, we get street trees planted that way. But for the larger development projects where trees might be removed, there isn't necessarily a requirement to replace it right now. We do, again, actually, Commissioner Kent, thanks to your work on the Planning and Zoning Commission, we do require landscape plans with all of our significant projects. So the door is open to that, but it's not focused on trees alone.
Gotcha.
Any other questions before we open for public comment? All right, we can open for public comment. Anybody online?
No hands raised.
Is there anybody watching at all?
No.
Well, that would explain why there's no hands raised. All right. We can now bring it back for discussion. I would say that if there's somebody who's jumping on and, raise their hand, just let us know. But bring it back for discussion. Any comments now? So you're looking for feedback. We're kind of fingers crossed this might be our last pass at it, but we might have a few suggestions or requests.
I mean, I guess I'll start again. I've been on pattern here.
I thought that was your role.
I mean, it's really interesting. I appreciate all the work. It's kind of thought-provoking, and there's a lot there. One of the charts at the very beginning I thought was kind of interesting, and maybe it's totally true, but I didn't appear it. You said the kind of inspiration for this came from the Climate Action Committee. And I was thinking it was more of a grassroots thing, that everybody wanted trees. But I think in a more clerical government form, that's probably where it formally started. That was kind of interesting to me. I think there's a lot of kind of best guess stuff here, which is best you can do, like the 5%. You're going to do 170 trees, these kind of averages, and I can't say you can do much. But one thing in my own head I've had to go over in the last few years is this vision of big, large canopy trees, which I just don't think we can do. So we just have to start enjoying small, cute little trees, and that's kind of that's what our city's going to look like, because I don't see a lot of space. We have so much overhead wires and little planting strips, and embrace the crepe myrtle. It's kind of sad in some ways, but maybe I can get there. I'm a little concerned. And I see what you want, and I want the same thing. But I don't.
Well, that's where I like the idea of trying to support and encourage large trees on private land, because that's
one reason I'm actually on this committee, because we started with our connection with Buchanan when we lost that opportunity for big trees down there, because we put the infrastructure in and there was no place for trees afterwards. And we don't have many opportunities like that.
the bicycle lane on that.
Yeah, and we had those big sidewalks. We had space. So, just my 2 cents.
I do think it would be, I'd like to see that link to the list of trees. So if that could get sent out to the commission, I'd love to review it. I don't know if you guys looked at Physocarpus, ninebark, or Garrya silk tassel, but those are kind of native trees. I've seen like a silk tassel over under the BART tracks, which I think is...
Yeah, those are gorgeous little shrubs.
Beautiful, beautiful trees. But one of the things I would like to see is some sort of goal in terms of like how many native trees we're trying to get in. I know that obviously it's going to depend, but right now it's just like we want to increase them, but if there's some more firm metric, I think that might be helpful. I know it might not be feasible per se, and maybe it's just even like we're trying to do this small incremental increase. Like I think you said it was, I can't remember the pie chart, what exactly, how many native percent?
It's around 2%.
2%, so if we're like trying to go to like eventually 5% of our 5% trees, you know, is like native. I think something like that would be a nice target. But otherwise, I wanted to say, I think that this gives a lot of really concrete actions. I think like what was said previously, it seems like it does give a good jumping off point for things that the city council can get into, and even actions that it sounds like we could potentially start following up on. So I really like the plan. I don't think it needs a lot more. I think it sounds like I wasn't involved in the whole process, but it sounds really comprehensive. And so I feel pretty good about it. And if the other commissioners do as well, I would be satisfied with it moving forward at this time.
Thank you.
The comments? I can jump in with one small note, and this is back on our report, page 62. There's this line: in practice, when Albany staff reviews this tree removal application, the tree's condition and need repairs or pruning, city staff does not have purview to recommend pruning to reduce likelihood of failure. I think that's probably accurate, but I also know that when an application comes in, John does go and talk to them, and at that point would talk about the possibility of pruning. So I just think that's a little misleading to say that. I know that by the time it gets here, that's our choice, up or down, but I just want to be sure that city council is properly advised, that's all. Other than that, I did want to say that I very much appreciate the responsiveness to the public comment and the comments from this body. I noticed those things. I really liked how native species are really brought to the forefront here. They were not before, and I like that. Of course, I like the ginkgo biloba story because that was very important to me. One comment I had, and this is kind of a question, I'm not sure, I have a couple questions actually, but you're talking about the salinity tolerance for trees because of potentially recycled water. Now the recycled water, my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong about this, is that would be irrigation, and we don't have a lot of street trees under irrigation. On the greenway, sure, but mostly it's just rain or the residents. So I'm not sure, maybe that'll change, but
I also think that might come into play if we start actively watering, using watering trucks, and then.
Fair enough, yeah.
Things come in, and I know some places it's mandated that.
where is the pipe now? Is it into Berkeley yet?
I think East Bay Mud's struggling with that.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to mention that. I had a question for John. So right now, how many street trees do you know, or you may not know this, are planted, but you don't plant? Just somebody, a property owner says, I want a tree there, and just plants a tree there. Yeah, yeah. A year, okay, okay. So that's part for this outreach effort is to say, hey. And of those, how often do they pick a good tree? Nobody knows.
Does that include the ones that the city planning commission tells them to plant?
If they require,
Does that include
that
the
maybe.
required trees? What's that? Do you count the required trees that the planning commission? In the 170 trees, well, I know, how do we, in the 170 trees, does that include the trees that are required to plant for development?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they're all part of the planting project in the winter. They get added to the project.
But I thought the residents plant that themselves. Don't they?
We plant.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, maybe they do, yeah.
The street trees, all but about 12, I understand we plant.
Yeah, we plant.
Yeah, you're right, okay.
I think if we're calculating the 170, we would take every tree that's planted in a year, regardless of
Sure.
who's actually doing
Of course, yeah, okay. Now, that's good. That was just something that came to mind as we were talking about, because that's something we don't have a lot of control over, but it is an opportunity for outreach. Another comment, and this probably is for a later step, but I've seen our recommended tree list, and it's too darn long. It's overwhelming, right? It's overwhelming for people. What is that? It's going to be longer. Well, there we go.
I'll just say, I think part of the problem is we're trying to get a new list of trees. We're trying to get climate adaptive trees, and we're not sure which ones really are going to work. You know, we have
Well, maybe it's something
guesses, but
maybe it's more a graphic design question then, because there are, if you have a street tree well, you don't need to see the whole, this size, you don't need to see the whole list. Here's just the 300 that you can choose from.
that also, right now it does differentiate.
You can't sort, but it's still overwhelming.
With, but it's all one long list.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a later step. I just wanted to make that comment. All right. I think that's it for me. Any other comments?
I had one very minor graphic problem. The first image you showed was that talk about diverse tree species, and you had the buckeye. Do we have any street trees, buckeyes as a street tree?
Those are from the inventory.
What's that?
That list is from the inventory data that we have, so those are existing trees in Albany right now.
So we have buckeye as a street tree somewhere?
Mm-hmm. Not many, but you do have some.
We have a lot of
15,
buckeyes, but I
right?
haven't seen them on the street.
Yeah,
There
quite
were-
small.
It was like 15, but then you guys also say don't include it as a tree in the future, for plantings because of issues that it has.
Interesting.
It's kind of messy tree but you can prune it up and get it. It spreads wide, so out over the street would be kind of difficult. But there are several definitely in this.
There's some. Yeah.
There's tons on my street, but they're not on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
They're just right on the.
No, there's street trees. There's a couple on Solano, when you go over, going west on the south side, when you go over the hill. There's a couple by Terrace Park, kind of tucked away in the corner, but they're street trees. They're in basins.
Cool.
Sidewalk.
Its nectar is toxic to honeybees, so it's one
Oh.
that like beekeepers don't really like that much if we were thinking about other reasons not to include it.
And I've seen children say, "Oh, look, chestnuts," because the seeds on tree look like chestnuts.
Yeah.
I'd like some educational outreach for the bees as well then. Yeah, okay.
Which actually is a problem with a lot of native trees. Even the live oak is toxic. A lot of trees are toxic, but, you know, in the Berkeley Ohlone Park Dog Park, people are concerned about a live oak because their dogs are picking up acorns and chewing them.
That one thing that it seems like could be an opportunity potentially in our parks if there's ever opportunities to plant is to try to some of these climate adapted trees and see how they do.
Yeah,
Test plantings.
Yeah, some test
absolutely.
plantings.
it takes 20 years to.
I know, to really know. I guess that's true.
Do we feel comfortable? We would need a vote to send this on, correct? Or
Correct.
Yeah, so do we feel comfortable with that? Do you want to see
Any
it again with some-
motions to?
I don't think I had any comments that I feel strongly enough to hold it up.
I would just like to second Hillary's comment about creating that list. I think it'd be really nice to have the tree list and with the, by tree well size, like you mentioned, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As the list it currently has, can sort it like a spreadsheet. You can sort it by tree well size.
see.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of there, but
The only other thing
It's
to add to
overwhelming.
that I would love is the tree canopy a potential
Yeah.
size, because that's otherwise how to sort, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
we have that on the one that we're developing, canopy spread.
You do have it on the, okay, great. Oh, and the
So
current
that's-
list, it has it too, great, okay.
your list is pretty. It's impressive.
Good list.
Yeah,
Yeah, all that being said, they should be living documents too.
absolutely.
One-time thing.
And this is. I mean, this has been updated. John, you update this from time to time. Yeah. All right. So, anybody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the, I guess it's final?
Final STMP.
So maybe I can help with this. On the staff report, the recommendation is that you recommend to the city council, that the city council approve, subject to your comments this evening, the draft street tree management plan.
Yes, I make a motion to do that.
Very good. No, you have to say it. No, okay. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right.
Okay. Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Kent?
Yes.
Commissioner Sardinas?
Yes.
Commissioner Trinkle?
Yes.
And Chair Abbott?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Again, thank you, and provide our thanks to your team. It was a fabulous, fabulous document.
It's been a lot of fun, yeah.
Well, I hope so. So what we try to do here. All right, moving on. 5.1, pavement curb and rehabilitation project. We're in phase 2.
Allison is going to switch places with Jeff, so we're going to give her a minute or two to log
Okay.
in and get set
Very
up.
good. So while they're doing that, let me just ask a quick question about this item. This is not a street removal request. This is just updating us that there might be requests coming. Is that correct?
Yes,
So there's not-
the agenda got a little.
I was going to say, because it looks like it's under action, but really it's more presentation.
We intended the action item to go first, and we wrote it that way, but.
Okay, all right, all right.
I
guess
think the
when it put into
template-
The template doesn't allow you to be that creative.
What we have to deal with, okay.
And our intent was, since we think that the street tree management plan was going to be a longer discussion and potential public, and we had consultants, we wanted that to
Understood.
go first, and then we can jump into this one. But that didn't work as
You never know,
we tried.
yeah.
And I don't know if, Allison, have you presented to the pros before?
Okay, I just switched you to,
Mute something, yeah.
to talk
Yeah,
about
no,
the CIP.
you've
So we all
sort of-
know Allison, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I promoted you to a panelist, so you should be good to go now.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be back here tonight to talk to you about the Marin Avenue Phase 2 project. There are potential tree removals that we're going to talk about tonight, but I'm going to give you an update for them first, explain what we looked at, and also kind of the reasoning for this potential removal. Nothing yet is set in stone tonight, but and if we were to do a removal, we'll be coming back at a later date. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second. Here we go. I think this is now working. All right. So I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet. The Marin paving project has been a 4-year effort at this point, including the addition of street lights, more recently with the completion of a street light assessment that was performed in 2023 to understand what our street light needs are. I'm going to talk about what we looked at in order to minimize tree impacts and, again, potential tree removals. So the Marin Avenue paving project consists of a variety of work. It's really turned into a streetscape project, even though it started out as a paving project. Currently, you can see here we have pavement rehabilitation, stormwater drainage, traffic signal renewals, bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements, and a bid alternate for intersection safety lighting. What a bid alternate is that we are unsure about the exact cost of the intersection safety lighting, and we want to see the bids come in before making that decision with City Council to make sure that we are prioritizing across all the various projects that use the same funding source. There were significant challenges to design of the paving and curb ramp designs on Marin Avenue. This has to do with the fact that Marin Avenue is an old creek, and so making sure we have ADA compliant curb ramps, we were fighting against kind of the clay underlayment and old creek. Included in the memo tonight is the report we wrote kind of documenting those challenges. Additionally, we paid significant attention to the interaction of storm flow and curb ramps, both because Marin is kind of still naturally channelizing overland flow, but also with curb ramps going in, we're putting some, in order to kind of make sure that we are meeting that ADA compliance, the curb ramps are fairly shallow, and we really want to make sure that we capture as much water as we can into an existing stormwater. With that being said, this project, the project limits contain 106 street trees. As part of the safety improvements for pedestrians, we are sharpening corners. This sharpening of corners benefited us being able to fit in curb ramps and reducing the amount of impacts to street trees versus widening intersections and coming in, kind of moving crosswalks in order to create safe paths of travel. As you can see here, this tree canopy excerpt. For the most part, the street trees along Marin Avenue are kind of clear of the intersections, as you can see here, which means I think without full proof, but I suspect what is going on here is that people understood the need for visibility at intersections and making sure pedestrians had a safe crossing when they planted the trees. During project design, we made many adjustments to infrastructure where possible, locating catch basins away from street trees, especially their trunks, and locating of conduits and pipes to the extent feasible where we can minimize how much impacts we're going to make to tree roots. Additionally, the project has a tree protection bid item, so the contractor is clearly aware of it, and they're required to bring on their own consultant arborists that John will be kind of reviewing to make sure they're qualified. The two locations where we had some challenges are shown in the red box over here. And as you can see, the street tree canopy kind of encroaches into that kind of intersection area. And these two trees are on the northeast and the southwest corner of Marin and Nielsen. The first tree that I'm going to talk about is at the southwest corner. This tree was identified. We're putting in a catch basin adjacent to the tree. Generally, we're able to do that without significant damage to trees. We've done this around town, and trees have survived with careful tree root pruning. In this case, the condition of the tree is poor, and we were concerned about the impacts, and so we consulted with John. The tree is very close to an existing power pole. It's topped quite often. And there is evidence of decay. And if there's questions about the specifics, I'm going to have to defer to John on this one. But we will be coming back again, where we can talk about kind of those damages as well, or the decay as well. In terms of kind of what we looked at when it came to kind of situating of this, the work here is, again, we generally are able to put in catch basins, weave them through roots. The catch basin storm drains are usually low enough that we're not in the root zone, and so it's really a localized impact with where the catch basin is located. Because of the challenges we had with our catch basins and storm drainage and curb ramps, we needed to be careful that we weren't allowing stormwater from Nielsen, which is a bit of a hill, to enter the curb ramp area rather than preferentially flowing around. Or in this case, what we did, we create an artificial high point. And so right at the curb ramp, even though the natural street grade comes around and sweeps around like this, we created a high point to force the flow into the catch basin before it reaches the curb ramp. And that kind of set up where this catch basin is. It had to be far enough from the curb ramp to make that feasible while pushing into a hill. So that's kind of generally what we looked at here. Again, this tree was in poor condition. We think had it been a tree in fair condition, we could have worked around it. And for the second tree, this tree is maybe a little bit more complicated. So the condition of this London plane is in fair condition. It's located at 1501 Marin. This is the northeast corner of Nielsen and Marin. In this case, the conflict we're seeing is with street lighting. And so as part of the 2023 street light evaluation, one of the locations where we identified particular need for intersection safety lighting for pedestrians was Marin Avenue, specifically Upper Marin Avenue. It's identified as a high priority, high complexity project. Marin Avenue paving project is therefore the kind of ideal time to be able to install it before we pave, funding permitting. Coincidentally, this particular intersection was actually studied in great detail as part of our street lighting evaluation. And photos of that from the evaluation are shown on the screen. And an excerpt from our evaluation was provided as attachment to this agenda item tonight. This intersection was identified as very poorly lit. As you can see in the very right-hand side, that's showing that photo showing the East Leg crossing. This is the same crossing. Just to the very, very right-hand side is where the street tree under discussion tonight is located. This intersection currently is highly backlit with great amount of glare, which makes the pedestrians crossing at night very hard to see. So when we started the streetlight design, one of the specific things we did was photometric studies. So this is where the designer takes a look at the existing lighting, any additional lighting, and make sure that we have the right quality of lighting at the right level and in the right location. Some adjustments can be made, and we did look at those throughout the design. In this case, we had specific challenges. So what we had here was a catch basin that needed to be placed right ahead of the curb ramp. Due to the street grade on Marin, we were not able to push this further away. This is actually the only location where we could feasibly place it without getting into a place where we create a low point without drainage. Placing of the street light to either side of the street tree would result in kind of shadowing of the light, great amount of maintenance and risk if that management wasn't being taken care of in a timely manner. And placing that the street light in this apex corner, can you see? Yeah. So placing it in the apex corner kind of creates the same condition of this backlit pedestrian crossing. And so kind of looking at these three options, we couldn't find one that would work. The final one we looked at was trying to push that light all the way past this second smaller tree on the very right. But that led to a light that was too far away from the intersection, so we were not getting the amount of lighting we needed. As of today, this particular tree here would not be planted in the current location. It's a little too close to the crosswalk, and trees in this location will naturally conflict with kind of street lighting needs, likely around town. Moving the crosswalk, unfortunately, will not resolve that either. Once we're kind of in a situation where every other location we found issues, we were able to work around, and this is really the one where we're assuming the street light is funded, the street light portion of the project is funded, we will have a conflict here with a potential street tree removal needed. And that's really it. That's for specifics. I'm happy to answer any questions and talk more about what we looked at.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering if the property owner has commented, or if you have talked to the property owner, because I imagine that's going to be a big difference for them.
We have not spoken to the property owner. The street light, without knowing if the street light is going to be kind of funded, the street lighting along the project are going to be funded, we have not spoken to them. But again, we would do that before any kind of final decisions on this tree removal.
Oh, and again, that's not before us right now anyway, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
I have a question, and this is gonna just totally show how little I know about intersections. Up a block from there is Peralta, the light, right? Down just like a block from there is one of the school crossings that has the flashing. What is the need for having a crosswalk at this intersection, given that Marin is a dangerous, fast street, and there are more protected crosswalks a block away?
Sure. It is very challenging to control people. They will cross where they want to cross, and I think our job as kind of caretakers is to make sure that where they will cross, we make it as safe as possible. Preventing people from crossing at those corners would require closing ADA paths of travel as well, which is not something we want to be doing kind of regularly, actually at all.
Why, so these are intersection improvements to improve the crossing, and at the same time, you're putting in, maybe I missed the beginning, you're putting in the stormwater treatment areas as...
This project doesn't have stormwater treatment, so the green infrastructure specifically is not being proposed as part of this project. We are extending the amount of permeable space. So what we're doing is we're replacing the existing stormwater laterals and catch basins, or installing new ones.
Okay, then I think just if you're doing this presentation to other groups, you might want to talk a little bit about the benefits, because we're losing the tree, which is something nice, but you're also taking all those pollutants out of the creek. That's a nice, balanced thing there. And
So, sure, the stormwater, Marin Avenue, not in addition to all the street lighting concerns at night. It floods regularly, or ponds at the crossings, which are dangerous for pedestrians. The infrastructure there is falling apart, and the stormwater kind of ponding at the corners in the existing condition is both dangerous and...
Ponds there.
I'm sorry?
It ponds there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Some pretty significant ponding along Marin Avenue. There's some very shallow old cross drains that are kind of capturing every spare leaf, debris, whatever comes through, holds it, and then water just spills everywhere. So what we're doing is taking what currently is connections to the storm main at every other block, and we're making those connections at every block, placing in large catch basins with large open areas, so that, especially along Marin Avenue with large areas for potential future street pre-planning, that the stormwater infrastructure is designed to be able to handle the amount of tree leaf debris that kind of comes down with rain, because that's another kind of concern with kind of what's causing some of this water to pond. It's just the sheer amount of leaves.
Sorry, for the species of trees, the first one, was that a liquid amber and the second was a sycamore, or were they
The first one was a liquid amber, the second one was a London plane.
London plane?
And one thing I forgot to mention, it's in our staff report, or the memo for tonight's agenda, is that there is a second tree behind the one that we're proposing. It's a little smaller. Somewhat, I'm hearing from John, it's expected to be able to grow in. And that was likely the location of the original camphor tree. And they planted this one closer to the intersection before the camphor tree was removed, potentially as to allow it to kind of grow in. Unfortunately, it was planted a little too close to the intersection.
Because I think that's one of the few sections of town where there's like a consistent type of tree that kind of creates this aesthetic in the neighborhood. But it sounds like if that tree were removed, then the other one might.
Yeah, and that one is also a London plane.
So we do, when a tree is removed, we require another one be planted. Would another one, it sounds like there's already one there. Would there be another opportunity near there to replace this tree?
So in the exact location wouldn't be recommended, just given the streetlight issue, especially not a London plane, which is very large. This project is currently not proposing to put in more trees. I think if that's a requirement for the project, we would work with John to find a
Well, it doesn't have to be
location.
one-to-one right at that location, I think.
Yeah.
But it does need to,
There are areas to plant, but we don't have property owner permission.
oh, no, of course, and it's all premature anyway. I'm just, would that be part of
We've
the?
done that, and we basically maintain Marina as like a commercial
Oh, okay.
road also, so, but
Yeah,
we'll be planting.
one way or another, yeah. Okay, very good.
We can fill in some of the spaces on Marina.
I was just noticing with the picture, it wasn't obvious where another tree might go. That's the only reason I brought it up. Yeah, that's the only reason it came up, yeah. Any other questions?
So basically, you can't. So basically, is there no lights in that entire intersection right now?
So there's one single light, I believe, and we're proposing to add 3 more.
Just one on each corner.
Yeah.
Would it what happened if you just didn't add a light where that tree was?
Then the existing condition where people are backlit while they're crossing would kind of persist, and so somebody coming eastbound or westbound would have a hard time seeing them. So one of the things with street lighting is we really want to make sure that the lighting is in the right location, because if you have light kind of shining behind people, it actually makes it harder for people to be able to see somebody crossing. And so you really want to make sure that that light is located far enough ahead of the intersection, but not so far ahead of the intersection that you create kind of a backlit issue. So there's definitely a balancing act between too far from an intersection, too close from the intersection, and where specifically it is in relation to a crosswalk. Yeah.
I have maybe I know this is totally outside my lane, but so traffic and safety is
approving these plans and all of that, right? I mean, traffic and safety has probably been all over this because it's, or they don't even call traffic and safety anymore. It's called something different.
Transportation Commission.
Transportation Commission. It used to be traffic and safety, is that right? Or, okay.
We used to be Parks and Rec, so.
I know, right? So, yeah, I just want to make sure. I'm just, it's funny because I don't know how much they're looking into safety generally, but I know this is just ridiculous. A good friend of mine advised me when I was I've advocated for the four-way stop near my neighborhood. And one of the things he said is actually a crosswalk, like without a stop sign, can be actually more dangerous because you're almost encouraging people to take it. So I just want to it's not my lane, but I just had to say, if we keep on talking about all these ways to like make this crosswalk more desirable to go across, yet it's Marin, it's like a freeway that I don't even know that you'd want to encourage somebody to use that crosswalk rather than like what Commissioner Sardinia says was one block away, you got the lights flashing that could actually save somebody's, be more.
I live right there, so
Yeah.
I won't be able to vote on this if there's ever a vote, but I never use that crosswalk
Yeah.
because I'm like, there are two options that are infinitely more safe, but I get that like people probably do, like you say, but like it's wild. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that one's like seems so dangerous.
So
Exactly, and it's like not only the crosswalk, but having those stripes makes it even more like, come cross. Anyway, just,
Yeah.
yeah.
So a big part of the planning and kind of design of any of these street infrastructure projects is traffic calming. And so Marin Avenue, I don't know if you've kind of driven through the center part of Marin from Cornell to Masonic Key Route. So this is the kind of feel of the rest of Marin. So we're going to continue that upwards. And so what we're finding there is that the lanes are narrowed, the bikeways are wider, there's painted bulb outs that are going in. There's a lot of improvements that are not just rounding up a corner. And so the crossing distance is shortening. The amount of kind of striping changes that have demonstrated kind of traffic calming benefits is also going in. The streetlights themselves will make it safer, so we definitely are hoping to be able to put that in. That crossing is actually the existing crossing. So right now it is one crossing there. And if we start closing off every other street, we're not really making this a more pedestrian-friendly city, which is really what I think the city goals are. So this kind of improvement of safety at intersections is towards that end goal, including the lighting.
I have a question. Is it possible to I know we do street trees, but like when we were earlier talking, there's like street shrubs or bushes. Like, is there a way to plant I think, what was Ryan was saying, like coffee berry, that doesn't grow very big or things like that. Is there the potential to put in like a baby tree?
That's worse.
It's worse?
Well, you have a shrub and you're driving in cars, it's blocking.
You don't see the pedestrian at all, yeah.
There's challenges.
The corner.
There's challenges as you kind of with the heights.
And I would just say, I wouldn't describe it as encouraging people to cross the street so much as trying to protect them, recognizing that they are going to cross the street. And so it's kind of a fact that they're going to.
Yeah, if that, hopefully,
Yeah.
we're, yeah.
Anyway, sounds like we're starting a little discussion here. So I'm sure there's lots of hands open for public comment on this item. There's probably not
no
even a
hands
name on the
raised.
list. All right. If we have any discussion, I mean, you're not really looking for anything from us at this point, just some for. Really not sure why this is an agenda item right now, to be perfectly honest.
I think this actually is a lot of what we heard tonight earlier in the last.
It does go hand in hand.
This is very much what I think.
Yeah.
We want to do this more so that when things come, you understand the context and know that we are putting in the work behind the scenes to.
That's good,
To,
yeah.
to address problems that don't even make it here.
I always thought you were just scrolling stuff down an hour before the meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's
Rest time you're. All right. Any other, no motion needed. Other than our thanks, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was very good. I especially enjoyed the lighting inventory. That was really fascinating. Yeah, that was very good. All right. Not seeing any subcommittees to update announcements, staff and commissioner announcements.
I just want to say, I know it's totally, there's nobody online, whatever, but given the state of democracy today, the fact that we're showing up for local government, I think is really important. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Fair enough.
Future is local government, yeah. I agree. I think local government's working really well. In my experience, it is.
Also, future agenda items. I should make announcements on future agenda items.
Well, can we get a debrief of this sugar sweetening? Or maybe you're going to announce it anyway, but.
You know what, I did not do it, but I can give you an update. We didn't get anything.
Fair enough.
It's the short,
Fair
I don't
enough.
know exactly. I think it was, so the bike programs and crossing guards were the main ones, and then they directed us to find a way to fund the things that were on our list, so that's.
Because everything was so conveniently put together, we should be able to,
It
it
goes,
should
"Oh,
be
these
easy.
are all great ideas, go do them." So we'll look at it, and, in my mind, the water bottle filling stations at the pickleball courts as well as at across from the senior center, just screaming for it, so we'll figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, all right.
It might take a little time, but we'll get to it.
Were there any announcements from staff?
I do have one announcement, but I didn't know if any commissioners had any announcement.
I just wanted to mention Summer on Solano this Saturday night. So it's our quarterly events, but it's in the evening this time, 5 to 9 this Saturday.
I was just going to say I won't be here in July.
Oh, okay,
Exciting
okay.
as that, but
So you won't be here and Brian Martin won't be here.
Brian's that again? Huh?
Yeah, Brian said he won't be here for June and July.
What's the date? Sorry,
It's after the 4th.
the 10th.
I think, is that
The 10th.
right?
Okay.
The 10th.
Remember, Congress will be handing out free ice cream at the park again this year, the 4th.
So that segues to my next announcement. City of Albany invites you to join us for our annual 4th of July in the park celebration on Friday, July 4th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Memorial Park. This is a free, family-friendly event, offers a day of live entertainment, delicious food, engaging activities for all ages, and an opportunity to connect with your community. Whether you're a longtime resident or new to the area, come enjoy the festivities, meet your neighbors, and celebrate Independence Day with us. There will be lots of activities for all. And if you don't want to drive and have to worry about parking, they will have bike valet, so, for free.
And don't forget the free ice cream. Okay.
Free ice cream.
Request for agenda items?
Yeah, do you have any
Okay.
items? Yeah.
So next week is Pollinator Week. It's recognized across the U.S. I will continue to request that we think about if there's a way for us to look at Bee City
yeah.
USA and whether or not that's something we could do. One of the things is it needs a commission to support it, and they do events that raise awareness, including during Pollinator Week. But I think it would also, given the presentation we had tonight, it'd be interesting to think about the Tree City USA, so bee and trees. I'd love to hear more about the potential for those programs in Albany.
Cool. Anything else? All right.
I have a couple
Yeah.
agenda items
Yeah.
that we're planning. So July is our quarterly street tree removals, and John does have a couple of things. So, and we're also trying to queue up, and it might be some version of this. We didn't get to our maintenance update, so that might be on the list. We've talked about having a Justin Fried, our transportation planner, he did a presentation on essentially e-bikes and things on the greenway and
Oh,
how
right,
it
right, right.
interacts with other users. I think that's kind of an important thing for us because we have a couple projects in the CIP looking at programming that, so that's kind of a nice thing to understand. So that might be a potential, as well as Margot and she has a new crop of interns that are working away that might be in a position to do a presentation. So definitely street trees and maybe something else.
All right. Sounds good.
And in terms of the Tree City USA, yes, we're going to do the last one to get us in there. So
When's Arbor Day? Is it the fall or is it the spring? Probably neither. All right.
I think it's April, does that?
Yeah, that sounds right. That's what I was,
I
yeah.
was gonna say, I think we just missed it.
Yeah.
So next year.
April, I think.
We're going to miss Pollinator Week too, darn it. All right. I think we can adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everybody.